Good morning, everyone. This is Elio Piedra, and you are watching Morning Coffee with Elio. Before I start this awesome show that I have for you guys, I would love to shout out to a friend of mine that has been making an impact in our community, helping businesses. Yes, that's right. And his name is Luis Salazar, the regional president of Lendio in North Florida. We want to thank Lendio, want to say Luis for being making a difference. You know why? Because Lendio has been supporting small businesses in our community, especially helping them to get the PPP plan that the government has been sending to to help the small businesses, the business community. Luis Salazar, thank you so much. And it makes sense to talk about Luis as well because Luis is a successful immigrant. He's from Colombia, and today I have the pleasure to be talking with a friend of mine, Danielle Chanzes, that she is an amazing organizer of civic engagement for the Florida Immigrant Coalition. Are you ready? Because Danielle is going to join us after this. Get up, baby, this morning. This is Elio Piedra. Another morning means another coffee because this is Morning Coffee with Elio. This is going to be a great day. We have a fantastic guest. And it is my pleasure to welcome to Morning Coffee with Elio for the first time, my friend Danielle Chanzes. How you doing?
Thank you so much, Elio. I'm doing great this morning. Love to start off the week with an interview, hanging out with my dear friend. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, let's bring the energy level up. Do you have your coffee already?
Got my coffee right here.
All right, that's what I'm talking about. That's all that matters right now. Morning coffee. So you were explaining to me before before we started the show why today Monday is so important for everyone. I mean everyone needs to know that today is a very important day. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I definitely need my coffee this morning because it's going to be a long day, but it is a really exciting day because today, Monday, July 20th, is actually the voter registration deadline for the primary elections that are happening in August 18th. And so with the state of Florida, you have to be registered to vote. If you're a citizen of the United States, you can vote, but you have to be registered to vote. And in the state of Florida, you have to be registered 30 days before any given election, which is why today is a voter registration deadline. So I think sometimes, I've been out doing this work in this new iteration of this program since last July. So I've been doing it a whole year. And, last July when I would be out there, people would say, well, when's the election? When's it coming up? Like, it's so far away. People want to put it off sometimes. They think they'll get to it later. You can't get to it later. Today is the last day. You got to do it today if you want to vote in these elections. You got to make sure you're registered. And you got to make sure that your address is up to date too. It's not just about making sure you're registered, but you want to make sure that you're registered in the right place. So if you've moved, make sure that you have the correct address. And that's why I came here today to talk about that.
Nice. I would like to ask you and to learn more about what is Florida Immigrant Coalition about. Talk to me about the organization.
Yeah, so Florida Immigrant Coalition is a statewide coalition of individual members and organizations that are working to make sure Florida is a welcoming place for all people, including immigrants. And so we run a lot of different programs. I specifically work in the Civic Engagement Program. Our Civic Engagement Program is currently running in 5 counties. So we're in Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, Volusia, I believe, and also in Alachua County, and I'm the Alachua County organizer. But in addition to our civic engagement program, we also run a lot of different programs. We're headquartered in Miami, and we definitely want to make sure that we're supporting our immigrant community. So we run an immigration hotline for people who need immediate support. We also do a lot of work around TPS and DACA. We do citizenship clinics to help assist people in becoming naturalized citizens. And so, like I said, we're just working to make sure that Florida is a welcoming place for all the people, including the immigrants.
And when you mention support, what type of support you guys, do for the immigrant community? What type of support do you guys give?
Yeah, so I think honestly, one of the best resources we do have is our immigration hotline. With the passage of SB 168 last year, it definitely put our immigrant community at risk because it requires that sheriffs cooperate with ICE to detain people. And so what we do is we just offer support. People can call in if they're having any type of issue, if they're in fear of deportation, if they're having any type of issue, they can call into our immigration hotline and they'll get the support and the resources they need from us. And then I apologize.
No. I wanted to ask you, what do you think sometimes people, they don't want to vote? They just say, no, I don't want to vote. I don't think I'm going to vote for this or that. And you are talking about the importance of us voting. I mean, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, so one thing that I always try to tell people is people have really valid reasons for not wanting to vote. And we can't change people's minds by invalidating those reasons. We can't just say, oh, you don't vote, you're ignorant. We're not helping anybody because people have really valid reasons. I think one of the biggest things that I encounter when I'm out in the field, pre-coronavirus, our program's all digital now, but pre-coronavirus, while I was out in the field, people don't have a lot of trust in the vote. People don't have a lot of trust that, their vote counts. They feel like their vote doesn't count. They also fear corruption, that, whoever's running the elections, that they're rigged. And I can say personally, well, maybe not personally, but, being the daughter of a Dominican immigrant, and I think it's something that's really prevalent in Latin America and South America, is that elections in those countries, if they have elections at all, are very corrupt. And so people come to this country and they don't necessarily have faith in that democracy because it has not been their personal experience. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest barriers, is that lack of trust.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that because I heard that down there in Miami. I was actually watching a show the other day, the Cuban influencer, saying that people, they don't have trust on sending their votes via mail, all right? They are saying, hey, don't worry about Corona. I mean, go in person, because if you send it via mail, the vote's gonna probably go to someplace else. What can you tell me about this?
Yeah, so I also want to say that that's also really valid criticism. To be honest, prior to coronavirus, I was not the biggest fan of vote by mail. In the 2018 elections, the Miami Herald actually put out a study that said if you vote by mail, the likelihood that your vote doesn't count increases by tenfold. So it is a real thing. I think the issue here is having the knowledge to be able to overcome that. So when it comes to vote by mail, one of the reasons that people's vote, or the most popular reason that people's votes don't end up counting, is because we have what's called a signature match law here in the state of Florida. So when you do vote by mail, you have to sign your ballot. And then they have volunteers in the supervisor of elections office that are comparing that signature on your ballot to the signature that's on your driver's license usually, or for when you register to vote. Now, I know my signature evolves over time, and admittedly, I've been a little bit more cognizant because it's getting a little sloppy, and I worry about, my signature not matching. So there's tools, though, in place for people to be able to track their vote, and I think understanding that will help overcome that, because ultimately, during this time of coronavirus, it's not necessarily safe to go vote in person. So knowing how to go to your supervisor of elections office and track your vote by mail ballot, and then see that it was received, and then see whether or not it was accepted or rejected. And if your vote by mail ballot was rejected, you can actually contest that. There's a process that people can go through and go down to the supervisor of elections office to validate their ballot to make sure their vote counts. So I think as long as people have that information, it's totally safe to vote by mail, and it's understanding what barriers might be in place, and then being able to overcome them.
Wow. So what do you think we can do, or what are you guys doing, will be my question, to kind of like give that trust back to people in case they want to vote by mail? Because I understand that some people are so concerned about the votes going to a different place and all of that, but now with COVID-19, this is a huge limitation that we have. So I think we work more on I will say, like the developing that trust that we need to have in the committed, whoever they are dealing with these, ballots. I think it would be better. Or what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the biggest things that our program strives to do, is to build trust in the community. That's why, prior to this global health pandemic, we were out in the streets knocking on doors. Something that I also want to point out for Florida Immigrant Coalition is that, we believe in equal access to our resources. So all of the materials we put out are not just in English, but they're also in Spanish and in Creole. I'll actually show you my shirt right here. This is a Florida Immigrant Coalition shirt, and it says Ford Fuerza Fos, because we put everything in English, Spanish, and Creole. So while we don't have like a huge Haitian population up here in Gainesville, a lot of our canvassers in Miami and Broward specifically go out into Haitian immigrant communities and register people to vote in Creole and make sure that that language barrier is not there. Same thing in Miami and Dade. And then even here, because I'm a Spanish speaker, I go out and I encounter people who don't speak English, but we have our voter registration forms in Spanish, and we make sure that people have access to those resources. So I think us just being out in community is the best way to build that trust. After we register people, we have a quality control team that actually calls and follows up with people to verify that they actually did encounter one of our canvassers, that they did want to register to vote. But even now in the time of coronavirus, we've been making hundreds of thousands of calls through our statewide civic engagement team, just trying to get people involved, texting them the link to our website to make sure that they can register and that they can request a vote by mail ballot, and then following up with people. So we have multiple phases to our program, and as we're approaching that voter registration deadline today, we're going to be moving into our Get Out the Vote portion of our campaign, where we're just trying to motivate people to go to the polls on August 18th. And part of that is going to be a voter education on, what are the upcoming elections, and also how to use their vote by mail ballot and how to track their vote by mail ballot. I'm not saying it's going to solve all of our trust issues, but I think actually being there and being a resource to the community is the best way that we can build that trust, is just showing people that we're there.
Awesome. And this website, how people just can just go there to this website that we're showing on screen and vote?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, today is super important, 11:59 p.m. You have to make sure you're registered to vote. You have to request actually, today's just the voter registration deadline. You still have a little bit more time to request that vote by mail ballot, but might as well do it now anyways, right? But if you go to the website, it's a really user-friendly interface that we've set up, and it basically just comes up as 4 squares, and it'll say register to vote. So if you've never been registered to vote, you can go ahead and click that. Also, if you just need to update your address or request a new voter card, you can click that same square, and it'll just ask you questions and take you through the process of registering to vote online in the safety of your home.
That is awesome. Danielle, I wanted to ask you, because you are, your family from Dominican Republic, and you are very involved as the organizer of civic engagement for this organization. How does it feel for you to be doing this, this job, developing this project with this organization, and you actually being an immigrant? I mean, your roots are immigrants. So how does it feel for you?
Yeah, this work is so important to me. I've always been really involved and engaged in doing things in the community. But in the past 2 years, I worked with Flick. I just recognized, like, some days it's so hard to do this work. People don't want to talk to you. Like, you're standing out in the street corner, and they're like, "Are you registered to vote?" And they're like, "Leave me alone." They tell me to go away. But then you have these really amazing conversations sometimes with people who are just like, "Oh my God, I've wanted to do this and I didn't know how." And I think back honestly on my personal experience. My mother was not always a citizen of this country. She became a naturalized citizen when I was in 9th grade. And wow. I remember, going to the citizenship ceremony with her. And I don't even think I appreciated back then what it meant, for her to become a citizen and to have a voice in this country. There's so many people in this country that exist that, that have immigrated to this country in search of that American dream, in search of a better life, that pay taxes, that work in our communities, but are not given a voice. And that changed when my mom became a citizen, and it's so impactful. And I just have to say I'm so proud of her, because she's actually a city commissioner now in Pembroke Pines, where I was born and raised. So she immigrated to this country when she was 20 years old, and, worked really hard to, make something for herself. And then she became a citizen. And then not only was she able to have the power to vote, but she's actively participating in this democracy and representing her community. So I'm just so proud, and it's so meaningful to me, because of my mom and her story, to be able to empower others in that same way.
Well, we say hello to your mama this morning, and and we wanna say hello to the Pembroke Pines. This is where you are from, right? All right,
yes.
All right. I performed there in the beautiful theater that they have down there. I really like Pembroke Pines area. So hello, Pembroke Pines, South Florida. So, I ask you because I've been being the daughter of an immigrant. It's really, I bet it's really special for you to be doing this job. And I want to go back to when you were talking about that. Sometimes you go to talk to people, and they are like, "Oh no, don't talk to me, leave me alone." Do you think that? Why do you think people react in that way sometimes? Do you think that they may, let's say they think that you are supporting this political party or another political party because of the name of the organization? Because, sometimes people, they get the wrong perception of things, especially with organizations like this, the immigrant name. They are like, "Oh, you are supporting this party or you are supporting that party." Why people react this way?
Yeah, so I think it's it's a few things. So one, some people are just busy. Like, imagine when you're walking through the mall and then people are just like, "Hi, do you have a minute?" And you're like, "No, I'm good. Like, leave me alone."
They're going to the restroom or something, right?
Exactly. So some people don't really recognize it. My strategy when I'm doing the work is to not be abrasive. Some tips I give people, I'm like, just smile and wave. If you smile and wave at people, a lot of times people think that you know them and that they want to talk to you. And I'm like, "Hi, are you registered to vote?" So that's a good strategy. Again, that's more when we're doing in-person work, but I think people can hear your smile while we're doing these calls through the phone as well. So I think, yeah, sometimes people are just really caught up in their own lives and they don't necessarily want to take the time to stop. But the people who do, you can end up having good conversation. The other thing is, though, that you're totally right. There are some people who hear the name Florida Immigrant Coalition and are immediately turned off. I've had people be really abrasive towards me before and said, like, you're just trying to register all the illegals so you can cheat in the election. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. I want to reiterate, if I hadn't said it already, but we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We're nonpartisan. When we're registering people to vote, we're not encouraging anybody to vote for any one political party. We're just trying to empower people in general, because as citizens in the United States, every citizen here, for the most part, has the right to vote. That's being a little bit contested in terms of people who have been incarcerated and stuff. Amendment 4 was passed in 2018 that restored voting rights to formerly incarcerated people, with just a couple exceptions. But there's been some debate about, whether or not they have to pay their fines and fees. But overall, citizens of this country should have the right to vote, And a lot of times the reason they don't vote is different barriers. Barriers that look like language barriers that look like a lack of access to the polls, not having transportation. Sorry. Princess. I have to tell my dog to come.
I got excited.
Yeah. Barriers that look like, like I said, people not having transportation, people not having access, people just not having the education about their rights as voting. And so that's the stuff that we're trying to overcome. So sometimes, like I said, people are hostile, but keep that smile on your face, because even when people are hostile, you're going to have those like incredible conversations. And when I just personally feel like there's no better feeling in the world than empowering somebody. Like even when I have a hard day, if there's one person that was just so excited that they were able to get registered to vote for the first time or update their address, I feel good. So that's what keeps me going.
So Danielle, talk to me about, let's expand a little more on the different causes and missions of this organization, the Florida Immigrant Coalition. So I know you guys been developing something about the abolition of something related to prison. What can you tell me about this?
Yeah, so actually on Friday, I was really blessed to be able to moderate a conversation. And so part of the civic engagement team's mission is, having conversations, outside of just doing the civic engagement work. We're also trying to have conversations with the community about social issues. So in June, we were able to do a conversation, and it was called, I believe it was called From Stonewall to Minneapolis, How Riots Start Social Movements. And so we were able to center LGBTQ rights, and then just everything that's happening right now after the death of George Floyd. And then on Friday, I got to moderate this really incredible conversation around Black liberation, talking about voting rights to prison abolition. And I think that's really important. I think something that we can both acknowledge, Elio, like you as a Cuban man and me as a Dominican, daughter of a Dominican immigrant, is that there is definitely a lot of anti-Blackness and colorism in the Latinx community. I definitely grew up, like when you see people in the street, you hear terms like pelo malo, and it's always describing like somebody, with Black hair and like Afro features. And so there's a lot of things that we need to overcome in our communities to make sure that there's equality for everybody. And so we just wanted to kind of have that be a center piece of conversation. When we talk about voting rights have been suppressed for a lot of people, immigrants and Black people alike, since the founding of this country. And it has been a fight to get voting rights for everybody. Another thing that I like to talk about too is when we talk about the immigrant community, we talk about abolish ICE a lot, that we need to get rid of immigration and customs enforcement. We need to get our kids out of cages. Well, you can't say abolish ICE without recognizing the need to abolish prisons, because detainment is detainment. A cage is a cage. And so just recognizing the parallels. There's a really great book written by Dr. Paul Ortiz, who is actually local here in Gainesville. I actually have a copy of it, but it's called, I actually forgot what it's called, but it's an African American and Latinx history of the United States. And it goes through the parallels of like the struggle of the Latinx community and the African American community as we fight for equality in this country. So that's definitely why we're centering that conversation on Friday, why it's important today when we're talking about voting rights, especially given the debate around Amendment 4 and whether or not formerly incarcerated people have the right to vote, and what it means to be registered to vote. Today as an immigrant, also as somebody who is formerly incarcerated, and truly being a citizen of this country and having your voice heard.
Yeah, now that you're talking about that, we are talking about social issues, and you are right. For me, as a Cuban man coming from oppression from a communist country, something that I don't agree at all. And for me, I've been an American citizen since I will say it's going to be 7 years now, and I gotta tell you that in Cuba, for example, you don't have the right to vote. Number one, you don't have. It is like a fake election, right? We don't vote. I mean, they just said, oh, this is the president, and that's the president, and that's it. So we don't have a voice. We don't have human rights. They are not respectful about our human rights. And then here that you have the right to vote and all of that, and after what happened with George Floyd, now that you mentioned that, it was great that people was waking up, speaking up, and about all the racial issues. But don't you think that after a while things they got out of hand? I don't know, people, other groups got integrated with other groups and start destroying businesses from black people. That I was very surprised, because they were. I don't know if it's the same group, but they were defending probably the same cause. But then they start destroying businesses from Afro-American that actually they were needing the help. So it was so confused. So what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, so I think this is like a pretty loaded issue in question. I would like to say Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that riots are the language of the unheard. So sometimes people, like you said, it's good that people are waking up after George Floyd, but George Floyd is not the first name. I mean, I could literally name probably 50 people off the top of my head that came before him. Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Alton Sterling, Corey Jones in West Palm Beach, Robert Detman here in Gainesville, Florida.
Taylor.
Exactly. There's Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Rekia Boyd. Like, there's just so many names. And you're looking at hundreds of years of oppression since the first slaves were stolen off the shores of Africa and brought to this country. And, a lot of times, people want to confront these issues, and it's just like, well, everybody take a step back. Like, everybody just calm down. We're going to work on it. We're going to assign a task force. But when you're being actively oppressed, there's no time to be calm. There's no time to wait. People are dying. We're literally watching police murder citizens of this country. I mean, it's insane. And so, for me, I just think it's like some introspection about what's really happened. I know for me, myself, there has definitely been times where I'm so angry, like I've thrown something across the room. It's happened before, without a doubt. Imagine 400 years of oppression and watching your people be murdered in the streets, and how angry you would feel and feel like you wouldn't want to destroy things. So I think people look at it as the destruction of property, but it's much bigger than that. It's not just the destruction of property. It's about, like, can you hear me? Are you paying attention now? Because I've tried being nice. I've tried, we've tried reasoning with you, and nothing seems to work. So I'm gonna make sure you can't ignore me now. That's how I
Yeah,
see it.
yeah, no, and it's a very complicated topic because also when you see them destroying businesses from their own black Afro American, I will say the black business community. Um, and I hate to call it that way. Some people they call it that way, actually Afro American, but I will say the Afro American community, because in my case, I always said I consider myself Afro Cuban, right? In Cuba and Dominican Republic too, we have huge influence from Africa because most of the stuff that we have, like sports, music, everything came from there. So, but that's kind of like the confusion. How if you are supporting, let's say your house, you are destroying your own house. This is kind of like because they are supporting Afro American, but then they went to destroy the same Afro American businesses. That's what I mean. But I mean like what happened with after the George Floyd, that was one of the saddest things that I ever seen. It was amazing because people wake up, was speaking up, and I don't know if you heard about the March for Our Freedom that we had here in Gainesville, right? So we had the opportunity to live stream that and show, and it was like a very peaceful, amazing, well organized march. And I gotta mention, I know that there is all these, police feelings around the country, but we are glad that our police department here in Gainesville, it is not at that level. Well, they actually participate with the march. So I don't know. What can you tell me about this?
Yeah, I think I think again it's like a pretty heavy and loaded thing. I think you're bringing up a lot of good points. I'm trying to gather my thoughts here about all that. I will say that again, it's really good that people are starting to pay attention, but people have been in these fights for hundreds of years, literally, before anybody knew George Floyd's name.
Yes.
And it's easy to pay attention when something like murder happens, something that's so blatantly murder, like we saw with George Floyd. Um, and so I guess I want to just get into the topic of violence, right? Violence is not just the most extreme forms of violence that we witness, which is murder. Violence is perpetuated against Black and Brown communities every single day. When we see gentrification happening in our community, like Fifth Avenue and Seminary Lane, that's violence and destruction against the Black community. When you see the gentrification of Little Haiti in Miami and Alapata, these are strongholds in immigrant Black and Brown communities. That is violence being perpetuated against that community. And a lot of times the people who are enforcing that violence are law enforcement. I have to say that I recognize what you like perceive to be like good in our law enforcement here. I will say that, definitely there's a lot of room for improvement as well.
Oh
I
yeah.
work outside of my job with Flick with people who are facing incarceration every day. I work with people who are regularly harassed by the Gainesville Police Department, who are regularly harassed by the Alachua County Sheriff's Office, recognizing that over-policing does happen in our community. And so sometimes things feel like very performative and gesture. I think it's nice that, GPD came out to the March for Our Freedom. But I said when I spoke at a march recently, it's easy to show up to a march. Let me see your actions. That's the easy part. But if you want to live and breathe this idea that that Black lives matter, that brown lives matter, that there needs to be equality, it's so much more than showing up to a march with a sign. And so I guess just to circle it back around to why today is so important when it comes to voting and why we need to have our voices heard. Another argument that I hear pretty regularly from people is like, well, I don't care about the president. That's a fair, thing to say. I tell people, okay, don't care about a president, but care about what's happening locally. There's a sheriff's race that's happening here in Alachua County. That's really important. So if you feel like your voice needs to be heard on that, then make sure you're registered to vote so that you can have a voice on who is your sheriff, because who's a sheriff makes a difference in how your community is policed, how your children might be treated if they're ever pulled over. Whereas if you ever have a loved one who might end up in the Alachua County Jail, our sheriff runs the jail. So the conditions that they'd be subjected to, those things matter. So be registered to vote if you care about those things. The Gainesville Police Department, the chief is not an elected position, but the city commissioners, the county commissioners, those are elected positions. And we do have a say in who those people are, and we do have an influence on the decisions that they make. There's been a lot of conversation around defunding the police. Well, the police budget is granted by our city of Gainesville. So if you feel like that's something that needs to happen, if you feel like more resources need to be diverted away from the police and into mental health, into any other programs, and I'm not endorsing these positions, but I'm just saying these are topics that have been coming up, then you need to vote on who your city commissioners are, because they're the people who ultimately make that decision. You need to vote on who your county commissioners are, because they oversee court services and they oversee the sheriff a little bit. So there's a lot of things. There's a tax appraisers up for election, judges are even up for election. There's a lot of things that when we're having these conversations around larger social issues that voting can't influence. We still need to continue organizing. We still need to take to the streets and fight for the things that we believe in, but we also gotta, for me, I feel like cast your vote, because we got to use all the tools at our disposal. And that's kind of what we're trying to do today, is they recognize that we want these changes, and there's a few different ways to get these changes, and voting is definitely one of them. That's why we're definitely encouraging people to get registered to vote today, to request those vote by mail ballots, and make sure that their voice is heard.
Nice, Danielle. Danielle, I am very glad that we had the opportunity to talk about all of this. I know I asked you some pretty complex questions, but you mentioned social issues, and that's police brutality, protest, all of this that is happening around the world. We could say, because even in other countries. I think it was right to mention that, and I gotta point out that I really admire how you guys support all these causes, but at the same time you are impartial when you are talking about voting and all of that. You are not endorsing political parties, or you are just empowering the community to just wake up, go and vote, and you want to give a voice. And this is the purpose of Morning Coffee. We love about having all different opinions here at the show, all type of opinions. It's not like, oh, you have this opinion, you can be a guest. We really want to share people's voice. We want to amplify people's voices, and we want to support our community and our the voice of our community, the voice of our business community, our social issues, anything that we can support. So that's why we are so honored to have you here today. And once again, so people don't forget, I want to share with you guys this website where you can go and vote, because today it is the last day, right?
Today is the last day, and I did just want to say thank you so much. I'm glad that we were able to talk about those tough things, because they are important to talk about, and it's a lot of the work that I do within Flick and outside of Flick, talking about social justice. And I just wanted to say, to the point about us encouraging everybody to vote, this is just a personal belief of mine, but if you believe in democracy, then you have to believe in democracy for everybody. So it doesn't matter whether or not you agree with me, if you're going to make the choices that I am going to make, because ultimately, if I believe that everybody's voice should be heard, I truly mean everybody's voice should be heard, even if it's a voice that I don't necessarily agree with. And that's the work that we're trying to do, is we're trying to empower everybody. Because everybody has a right to have their voice heard. That's a citizen of this country. And that's why I just want to, again, thank you so much for having me here today. And everybody who's paying attention, today is the last day to get registered to vote ahead of the August primary, which is happening on August 18th. If you want to vote on August 18th, make sure you are registered to vote here in the state of Florida. Make sure that your address is up to date. Make sure you have your voter card at home. You can use our website, flick.vote, to register to vote and request your vote by mail ballot. But just make sure you recognize and understand that your voice is important, and we want to make sure that your voice is heard and that you are empowered to vote in this election and every election hereafter.
Already. Awesome. Danielle, thank you so much for being here this morning. Thank you for everything that you do for our community. Thank you for making a difference. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your time, your energy, your will to make, to change, to bring change. Thank you for, for being willing to talk about, all these social issues. I know we were planning to talk about voting, all of that, but everything, it is affecting other things. So there are very tough conversations and discussions that we need to have, and here in public, with friends, so I think it's important to just talk and keep developing our communication skills, right?
Definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much once again. And if you are watching, please do not forget to like us and follow us on Facebook, on YouTube. This show, it is available right after the show on Facebook, and then evening time on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iTunes. So if you want to listen to it on your car, do not forget to leave your comment below, and we're going to meet you down there at the comments. Vote, vote, vote. Today is the last day to vote, to register to vote. So if you have any questions as well, please leave your comment and leave your question below, so Daniel and Florida Immigrant Coalition, they can get back to you with an answer. And as I always say, I really appreciate you for being part of the Morning Coffee community, and we're gonna see you guys next time. Thank you, Daniel. Mwah! My dear friend, an amazing dancer. Guys, thank you very much for watching Morning Coffee with Elio. Yes, we're really looking forward to seeing you Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Do not forget to like us and follow us on Facebook and become part of the Morning Coffee with Elio community. Stay tuned, stay inspired, and live full.